So before I start, I should say I gave this talk at the end of last December. And when I was finished, I had the thought, I was like, man, that was kind of funny today. Like, the jokes weren't on the paper, but they just came out, you know? And so I'm getting ready. It was just a version of this talk. I gave it to a group of moms. So I I shifted it a little. But I was getting my stuff ready tonight to leave the house, and I was talking to my 18-year-old daughter. And I was like, man, I hope I'm funny tonight because, last time I got it, she goes, Mommy, that was a momentary gift from God. That was not a character trait. So, we'll see how tonight goes. But anyway, so Paul kind of, said this already, but spoiler alert for those of you here, Lent is tomorrow. And for those of you out there, it's probably in the middle of Lent at some point, a few days in at least. So maybe you've been planning and praying about what you're going to do this Lent and how you're going to get the most out of this Lent. Or maybe you're like me and you went to dinner on Sunday night with your best friend and you were chatting it up at Bar Louie, having a very nice flatbread, I should say. And you're talking, and then all of a sudden it came up that Lent is 30 days away. And you're like, oh my gosh, the past month has been a little crazy. I didn't realize that. But that's okay. 3 days is good because if you're a last minute person like I am, you can do a lot in 3 days. So obviously the 3 pillars of Lent: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And tonight I want to talk about prayer and what we can do to kind of dive a little deeper in prayer in Lent, but also throughout the year as busy people in a busy, crazy world. Because I want to go deeper in my relationship with God, I'm going to add things to prayer because prayer is just communication in our relationship with God. So most of us know that prayer is important, but why is prayer even more important when you're busy and when you're super stressed? I have a visual analogy. Okay, so this is a glass and it is empty technically, but there's air in it, okay? So I can't take the air out with my hands, but I'm sure there's some scientific way that you could suction air out of a glass. I don't do science. I didn't do science well in high school, and I don't even try now. But if you take the air out, it's just gonna be replaced with more air. And if you try to suction it out all together, it is glass and it's just gonna shatter, okay? So how do you get the air out of the glass? Is if you pour some water or some liquid in the glass, then the glass has less air in it because there's less space for the air, okay? So if you think about this, you think about the glass is us and the air inside is the stress or maybe sins we're struggling with or, the things that life keeps throwing at us, whether it's good or bad, it's just, sometimes the bad and the good can overwhelm us, okay? But if we have a successful, I shouldn't say successful, but a deep prayer life and we're praying, then we can add God's peace and mercy to our life as we pray, and the air is still there, okay, but it's not consuming us. We are more consumed with our relationship with God if we're communicating with Him than the stress, okay? So, then it's all well and good to find time to do that and to put our relationship with God first, especially when there are so many important things in our life that need our attention. And God is our direct line to that grace and peace, so we need to tap into it often. Because this is what happens if we don't, is we may in the morning have a really great prayer experience, or maybe we went on a retreat for a weekend and we are completely filled up, okay? But what's going to happen is life happens and stress happens and you're stuck in traffic or dinner's running late or you had a bad meeting at work and all of a sudden you're drained again and there's a lot more room for the stress and the worries and temptation to sin and things like that. And so if you're not in a constant state, if you're not living in a constant state of prayer and adding more prayer to your life on a consistent basis, that is the only way to keep filled up. And so when things start to drain, you have a constant pouring into your life, okay? But here's the thing, is I started out talking, adding prayer to your life when you're busy and stressed, okay? So if you're busy and stressed, wouldn't that be the time that you shouldn't add things because you already have too much going on, why add more to your plate, okay? So there's a quote, and it's attributed to St. Francis of Sales. Now, did he technically say it? That's up for debate. And if you're in the corner of that he didn't say it, then you can find me later and argue with me. But I'm just, for the sake of this talk, I'm gonna say he said it because it's good. He says, every one of us needs a half hour of prayer a day, except when we're busy. Then we need an hour of prayer a day. And it sounds funny, and it kind of sounds contradictory, but here's what I think. I think we are not too busy to pray. I think we're a bit too busy not to pray. And here I still am, though, using that word busy. So what I'm going to do just in the next little bit of time is to throw out some tips that either I've tried that have helped me, maybe I've tried and they haven't helped me, but they've helped someone else, to kind of incorporate more prayer into your daily life as a busy person, but in an imaginable way. Know that I'm not perfect at this, and I'm still trying. I'm not like, I do not have a degree in busy prayer life, and I still struggle, but these are just some thoughts that I've had and some ideas that people have shared with me. So first off, I think the most important thing is to understand that actively living out your vocation, whether that is as a spouse, a parent, a child, an employee, whatever vocation state of life you're in, living that out is actually a prayer in and of itself. So in reality, as we are helpmate to our spouse, or parent to our kids, or caretaker to anyone that's under our care, whether older or younger than us, everything we do in those roles is lifting up a prayer to God. It's our way of communicating to God that we want to live our vocation in a way that honors him. There's a really cheesy 1980-ish song by Keith Green that my husband loves. And the music is so, it's very 1980s, but I love music, but I'm a lyric junkie, so I like the words more, and I love the words of this song, and it's called Make My Life a Prayer to You. And I won't go through the whole words and everything like that, but I mean, even the title is just like, I think that's our purpose in life, is to make all of our lives, every aspect, small and big, and lift it up and offer it as a prayer to God. So with that in mind, and by focusing on that thinking, give yourself permission to make prayer simple and manageable. You don't need to be on your knees for 4 hours a day. You don't need to wake up 2 hours early. You don't need to sit in church every day for a holy hour. It doesn't have to be done in a quiet space of solitude that no one's going to interrupt you, and you're not going to have any distractions. Now, some are called to that life. Monks, cloistered nuns, maybe even little old Mary who's 90 years old and just sits in church all day in your parish and prays. And that's amazing, because the world needs those people praying for all of us who cannot do that. But I can barely fit in my to-do list some days outside of my already time of prayer that I have, let alone add more to that. So I want to focus on the everyday actions that can be a form of prayer or reminders for prayer, like getting in your car, whether it's in the morning, wherever you're getting in your car, you turn your car on, pray for safe travels, pray for the people that are traveling at that time. Brushing your teeth. I hope everyone brushes their teeth in the morning. I don't know exactly how long. I was thinking 1 minute. My 18-year-old told me 2 minutes. So it's 2 minutes, all right. And I don't time myself. I shouldn't say, maybe my teeth are clean. I get, my dentist likes me. So, anyway, take that 2 minutes to just kind of offer your day up to God. You do it every day anyway, and instead of freaking out already about what's coming, just pause and, offer your day up to God. St. Teresa of Calcutta said, wash the plate, not because it is dirty, nor because you are told to wash it, but because you love the person who will use it next. So washing dishes can be a great time to pray for your family. It's a really good time to pray for the person in your family that was supposed to wash the dishes that didn't. And so as you wash the dishes, you can, ask God to empty you of that frustration and fill the person that was supposed to do it with grace. When I'm in my kitchen washing dishes, it's a great time to just lift up my family who's going to use the dishes, and whatever kid is struggling. Or sometimes I'll turn on some worship music and, listen to it as I'm washing the dishes. Everyday tasks around the house like that, It can also be a great time to practice like what's called like mental prayer or contemplative prayer. And you can imagine what it was like for Mary to be doing those tasks. Because, I mean, we all think about Mary like, you know, as this whole, you know, she had to do the dishes. You know, she had to, you know, do the laundry. You know, she had to chase Jesus around as a toddler when he had a little too much energy, you know? And so when you are doing those things, you can kind of take a moment and pause and kind of sit with Mary and ask her how she would lift those activities up as a prayer to the Father. At work, for those of you who go into the office or maybe you work at home and do Zoom meetings, when you leave a meeting, pray for the people that you were in the meeting with. When you get up from your desk, or if there, you know, multiple times a day, or if there's another action that you do, pick a prayer and just say it as you're getting up. And it doesn't even have to be like a formal prayer. I mean, saying, hey God, or hey Jesus, I was just saying hi, that doesn't sound like a prayer. And people are like, dude, that's not praying, that's just like whatever. But it is, because prayer is communication with God. And if you stop 7 to 10 times during your day and say, hey Jesus, I just wanted to say hi, you're choosing to remember God, and God is choosing to bless you because you are remembering to include him in your day. In the car is another great thing. You know, I mean, how many of us spend so much time in my car? I know as a mom, I spend so much time in my car, either to work, school, if you're traveling, running groceries, whatever. And when you're in your car, you could say a rosary, even a decade of the rosary. If you have a longer drive, you know, a half an hour or something, you can turn on a podcast. I know there's some great Lenten podcasts out there that have popped up, but just even like outside of Lent, like Bible in a Year or Pints with Aquinas or something like that. Or just Christian music again, like, and a lot of times like I'll be driving and I'll hear like a lyric from the song, because remember I love lyrics, or like a line in a podcast, and I'll pause it and then I'll just kind of sit with that, you know, for a little bit and just kind of reflect and just take some quiet time in my car. So someone once gave me trouble for praying in my car, because they said, well, no, when you're praying, if you're really praying like you're supposed to, you should be completely focused on prayer and not distracted by doing another activity. And they were very, you know, so I took it to a priest that I very much respected. And he challenged that person's view. And he said, if we all waited to pray until we had no distractions and could completely focus on God, that most of us would never actually ever get the chance to pray, because the human brain is always getting distracted and going in a million different ways, and you know, like this world is crazy and there's lights flashing and everything. But taking time out for God in the midst of another activity only shows him again how important he is to us and how much we want to bring him into our everyday activities. Because if you think about it, if you're driving in your car and there's someone else in your car with you, you're probably, you know, especially if it's a friend or a family member, you're probably going to be talking to them, right? The only exception to that is if your teenage daughter is in your car, then you're talking, and then a minute or two into the conversation, you realize she has her AirPods in and hasn't heard anything except Taylor Swift, and then you ride in silence. But that's another story. But, you know, or if like you're spending time with your friends or your family, you're playing games, you're out, you know, doing axe throwing or whatever, you know, like you're talking, you're communicating, because that's how relationships are, and God wants our relationship with him to just be that way too. He wants us to just communicate and hang out with him like we would any other friend. When someone asks you to pray for them, like if they send you a text or you're hearing a voice message, do it right then. Because, you know, so often I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that later. But then it just gets put on that, you know, to-do list that's already 50 things long. And then that's just adding more stress to my life that I don't need, you know? So just take 30 seconds. Everybody's got 30 seconds. Take 30 seconds to do it then. If you're in person with them, take 30 seconds to pray with them in that moment. It doesn't have to be pretty. No, it doesn't have to be eloquent and the perfect words or anything, you know? Just say something simple and lift it up to God to let that person know that you care and to remind God that you trust him in that petition. I have a friend who has prayer zones in her house, and she has assigned a room to every person in her family and then some close friends and stuff, so that when she enters that room, whether she's going to stay there for a while or she's just walking through, she lifts up whoever is assigned to that room, she lifts them up in prayer. When I gave this talk in December. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to implement that. I remember, I still haven't done it, but it's on my top Lenten, thing for this Lent. So I'm gonna assign things tonight when I get home. I'm assigning rooms. But use like walks or workouts to incorporate prayer too. Instead of like turning on Netflix and watching the next episode of that show you're binging, turn on a podcast or, say a rosary or something like that. I mean, you're taking care of your body through working out. You might as well take care of your soul as well at the same time. I have a Bible plaque in my kitchen that I can like switch verses on it. Now, I do not switch it as often as I need to, but it's in my kitchen because I'm in my kitchen a lot. And then I can read it and kind of reflect on it, because I really struggle reading the Bible, because that's one of those things where like you can't do it in your car. Please don't do it in your car. You need to find time to sit down. And so what I found helpful, because I do want to be in the Word, is to like every once in a while list out 20 to 30 Bible verses, and maybe not just one, but like maybe a couple or something, and then pick one every day and like, just read it at the beginning of the day, and then you can think about it as the day goes on. And that way you may not have time to read an entire chapter of the Bible, but you're still in the Word and you're still listening to what Jesus has to tell you through his Word. And then breath prayer, like simple 3-second prayers, like I believe, help my unbelief, create in me a clean heart. You can like set timers on your phone, for like a couple times a day, and you just, or every time the phone rings, or every time you get a text, you say that. And again, it's just that little bit of, hey God, I'm including you in my day. I'm remembering you. I'm choosing to communicate with you, even though my mind is a million other places. And if you have kids, bring them into all of this too, obviously meal prayers, bedtime prayers, all that stuff, but, they can be a part of this too if you have school-aged kids who are home with you, or even younger who are home with you. So far, all these examples have been about fitting prayer into things you already do throughout the day, kind of. That can be great when you're super busy, because remember, prayer doesn't always need to look like a formal planned event or anything like that. But some people feel the need to have more structured prayer, more than things that I've mentioned, and that is a wonderful thing too. And I honestly think people need both. And some people need more of one, and some people need more of the other, just depending on how your life is at that moment. But I think that you need both, because remember what I said about prayer is that it's a relationship, and how do relationships work? Sometimes you hang out with people and you talk, but sometimes, especially those close relationships, you just kind of want to be with the person and rest. Like I know sometimes on a really busy day, I just want to come home and sit next to my husband, and I might not even want to talk to him. I just want to like be with him in stillness, or I might want to have a deeper conversation with him that really pours out my heart, or he may, vice versa, and I may need to really just focus all my attention and listen. And that's how God wants our relationship to be as well, is, the hangout time, but also those times of just stillness and really deep intimacy. So set your alarm a few minutes early in the morning and wake up a little bit early. And I'm not saying like you have to do it 20 or 30 minutes, because I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to hit the snooze, but like try 5 minutes early. And in those 5 minutes, maybe get a Lenten devotional and read a paragraph of a devotion. And then for those next 4 minutes, just kind of sit with that. If morning is really not good and hey, I'm going to hit the snooze, maybe 5 minutes before you go to bed. If you're like me and you're not a morning person, but you're also not a night owl, find some 5 minutes in the middle of the day. Maybe it's your lunch break, or, something consistent that hey, I'm usually always free during this time, just to because, it doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing. Because communication is a two-way street. If you're always talking to God, but you're not being still for him to listen, or for you to listen to what he has to say, you're going to miss like a ton of what he has to offer. So this is a big challenge, but pick a time every week and get to church. And it doesn't have to be a holy hour, like in front of, in adoration in front of Jesus and the sacrament and the monstrance. It can be just a 15-minute trip to church, or a 20-minute trip to church, but put it on the calendar, because if it gets in the Google Calendar, it's probably more likely going to happen, okay? And make it consistent, and make it a priority, okay? And that's when you can bring a Bible or a devotional book. I still bring my headphones because lyrics, but I think that's really important. And if you're out there, Because or if you have young kids and you're like, man, well, I can't do that because I would need to hire a babysitter. Here's my thought. You hire a babysitter to go out on a date with your spouse. You hire a babysitter to go to a concert. You may be thinking about hiring a babysitter to come to the Marianist Retreat Trivia Night on April 5th. Shameless plug. Why not hire a babysitter for a half an hour to go visit the person who loves you more than anybody else in the entire world? You know? Or if you have a friend who has young kids and they have, you know, the same age, go together. One of you sits in church for 15 minutes, one of you watches the kids, and then switch. Plus, the kids get to go to church every day. They realize it's not just important to invite Jesus into your house, but you have to go to his house too. Grandparents, if you have grandkids, how awesome do you think Jesus' heart just melts for you if you would babysit your grandkids so that your kids could go spend time with Jesus at church? You know what I mean? Like, I think that is like the ultimate prayer that the Father would like just gush over. So I don't know, that's just my thought. So last thing, as much as God wants to have a relationship with us through prayer, Satan wants the exact opposite, and trust me, he's going to do whatever he can to make it hard. So I can guarantee you, if you like leave tonight and are like, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to implement this one new thing, like there's going to be obstacle after obstacle that gets in your way. But that's where persistence comes in. Don't give up. Keep trying. Erase the plan. Start again. Pivot. Adjust. Just don't quit. Okay. I coach basketball, and the past couple of years, if any team pressed us, we had a really, really hard time getting the ball across the court. A really hard time. But I didn't quit. Like, you know, like when we couldn't do it, I didn't be like, okay, we're just gonna forfeit the rest of the game and move on. Okay. We kept trying. Sometimes it didn't work until like the last time, you know, when the other coach was like, okay, girls, back off. But we kept trying, and we tried different things, and we didn't give up, you know? Because I know it's super cliche, but like, you know, they say the only way to fail is to stop trying, but it's 100% true. Thomas Edison said this: I have not failed 700 times. I have not failed once. I have succeeded in proving that those 700 ways will not work. When I have eliminated the ways that will not work, I will find the way that will work. So basically, don't give up. Don't give up on looking for that one way that works for you to be in relationship with God through prayer. Your relationship with God is blessed in the effort as well as the successes. And remember, figuring out how to communicate more with God, how to carve out more time, no matter what it looks like, is going to make everything else in your life seem lighter. But it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look a certain way. God isn't going to compare what you do to what your friend does, or your mom or your grandma or whatever. He just wants you to talk to him, and he wants to talk to you however that looks and however that works best. I was thinking about the widow in Mark's gospel who donated the 2 cents. Okay, she only gave 2 cents, which paled in comparison to what those that were wealthier than her gave. But she gave from her need rather than her wealth, and she gave her all. And that's God. That's all God is asking us to do as well. He's calling us to give from what we have, no matter what the size of what we have is. Saint Rose Philippine Duchenne, who's a big time saint, not that they're small time saints, I just happen to like her a lot. She said this. She said, God does not require great achievements, but a heart that holds nothing back for self. And I just love that, because God doesn't just desire our individual. God just desires that our individual prayer relationship with him challenges our heart, and it comes from a place of desire to love him more, and it takes sacrifice, no matter what it actually looks like from the outside. So no matter what other people see or don't see you doing, it's really just between you and God knows your heart, and God knows what you're bringing, no matter if nobody else knows. So I know Lent starts in just a few hours now, so I will stop talking. But I don't think God will mind if you don't have every aspect of how you will spend your Lent planned out by the time the clock ticks tonight at midnight. So maybe on your way home tonight, talk to God and listen, and see if he has any Lenten prayer ideas that he wants to throw at you at the last moment, or maybe there was something that you heard tonight that you would like to try to implement. and then use the next few days to figure out how to make that happen. But remember to allow yourself grace and mercy, just as God will, and to pivot and change throughout the Lenten season if something isn't working as well as you thought. Because God isn't looking for perfection. He is only looking for your heart, which we know is never perfect but fully loved by him. Because his greatest desire is that we will never stop striving to build our relationship with him and to always work towards uniting our heart with his.